Murder at Ocean View College, Chapter 24. Suspended. Hearing his name, Danny started to the front of the room, but hesitated when he wasn't sure where to sit. He picked the chair on the other side of Jade, but before he could sit down, he felt a tug on his sleeve and looked down at Crystal, who pointed to the seat right beside her. He decided she was probably right and moved to the desk beside Crystal. He knew that this was not the right place for him to try to talk to Jade. Maybe he could catch her after they listened to whatever the captain had to tell them. Captain Mitchell remained standing. He looked like a stern father about to punish his children. He cleared his throat and looked directly at Jade. Officer Lee, you have violated at least 2 of the regulations for student officers here at Ocean View College. I am sure you know what they are. You did not report the incident in the parking lot Friday night. It is regulation that any such disturbance be reported within 24 hours. If you were not able to file a written report, you should have called in the report the next morning at least. I know that would have been Saturday, but we do have an answering machine and a fax machine. You could have called me on my cell phone too. You were negligent in your duties. He stopped talking. Jade's face began to turn red, and she lowered her head. She looked disappointed in herself. And that's not all, the captain continued his speech. Jade raised her head to look at the captain. I received a report earlier that you attacked a student worker in Peterson Hall this morning. The student claims that you embarrassed her in front of her colleagues and other students, and that you hurt her physically. This conduct is unbecoming to an officer of the law. And you know that. You will be suspended for an appropriate period of time. Captain Mitchell paused before continuing his speech. Now, do you have anything to say in your own defense? He waited for her to respond. I plead guilty to the first charge, and I apologize. I was negligent. But the second charge is... She took a deep breath. The captain scratched his bald head and looked at her. I'm listening, he said. The second charge is false. I mean, it was justified. She stopped and started again. Captain Mitchell, I heard about a scheme operating out of the duplicating office. A group of students steals copies and sells tests to the football coach. The coach buys them so that his players can pass their academic courses and continue to play football. Captain Mitchell wrinkled up his face. Is this true? How did you find out about it? Yes, sir. It wasn't easy, but I got the information out of Amber Jones. She's the one who filed the complaint against me, I'm sure. Good work, Officer Lee, but you're still suspended. She tried to argue with him, but his face said, Don't argue. You can't win. Danny sat quietly beside Crystal, attentive while the captain scolded Jade. But he knew he could not let Jade take the blame for something he had started. Captain Mitchell, Danny drew the captain's attention in his direction. I would like to explain that I had a part in this, and it was actually my fault. I heard about this duplicating scam, but did not get all of the necessary information, and I asked Jade, Officer Lee, to interrogate the witness. You see, she's a girl, and I was in the position, you see. I'm a guy, and she, the other girl, Amber, is a girl. And she thought I liked her or something. So I asked another officer to interrogate Amber. I see. You asked Officer Lee to interrogate Amber Jones. Just then, Crystal spoke up. Captain Mitchell, actually, Danny told me about what he suspected and asked me to interrogate Amber. I suggested that Jade should do the questioning. The captain turned his attention to Crystal and Danny. This is all very confusing. Anyway, I wanted to talk to you two because you, Jackson, are the unit leader, and you, Soto, have been in charge of going to classes and asking for information regarding witnesses to the murder last week. And of course, that is the only part of this murder investigation that you are allowed to participate in. He looked sternly at Danny, but now he didn't finish the sentence. The three students watched Captain Mitchell shake his head and look at each of them in turn. He twisted his mouth into a frown. But if all of you are actually to blame for this incident, he said, then you're all suspended. The three students sat there for a minute in surprise. They didn't know what to say, but were afraid to argue, especially since the captain didn't seem to be in a really good mood. Then Danny spoke. Captain Mitchell, I haven't been very successful with my job. I have visited a few classes, but nobody admits to seeing anything. I have a question for you. Go ahead. The captain looked directly at Danny. Do you think that Ms. Quinn knew about this duplicating scheme? Do you think maybe that's what got her killed? The captain was thoughtful for a minute. Then he answered in a low voice, Could be. Maybe she found out. He turned his head and stared as if he were far away. Then he started talking again, but this time he was mumbling to himself. She always kept in touch with the coach, even after they broke off their engagement. They were friendly. She could have found out. Danny, Jade, and Crystal sat watching intently and leaned forward in their chairs to catch every word. They saw a quick look of surprise on his face when he turned back and saw them sitting there. The captain must have forgotten where he was. I would like to remind you that you are all suspended. No more class visits. No more interrogations. Leave it to the police. You three are relieved of your duties for a week. While you are on suspension, report in to me daily. Understand? Yes, sir, the three students answered in unison and nodded. They watched Captain Mitchell walk out of the room.